I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club. How is everybody?
Pretty well.
Good.
Nothing exciting going on, but life is good.
It's early fall, and actually, for once, we're in a good weather pattern. I can't believe it. For November 1st, it was 70 degrees today in Maryland.
I know, but don't say it too loud because the weather gods will hear you and put a blizzard in our path or something.
Give us a whammy.
Before we get started, I would like to make a shout out to a group in Southampton, England. October Books is a bookstore in the port city, and they had to move because their rent increased. And they found a new building 150 meters along the road. They had a prospect of moving 20,000 books along with all their furniture and shelving. So they did a call out to the community, and they had 250 people form a human chain from the old store to the new store. 54 doors along the street to the new location, and they passed over 2,000 books by hand in just a couple hours. And I think that is just so amazing that community can get together and save a bookstore. And I think that's great. And they deserve a shout out. More power to them.
Definitely. Where there's a will, there's a way. That's wonderful.
Exactly.
The love of books comes through.
Yes. That's the important thing.
Speaking of which, I wanted to talk about the Great American Read that was recently broadcast on PBS. They completed their survey. They have put out their list, the top 100 favorite American reads. To Kill a Mockingbird won, but I wanted to let everybody know about the mysteries that made the list.
Well, good.
Agatha Christie, and Then There Were None, came in at number 19.
Yay.
Okay, Rebecca Daphne du Maurier was number 25.
Wow.
The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, number 33. Okay, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, number 78.
Not surprising.
Yeah, I'm surprised that's far down.
I thought that too. I was a little surprised at that.
There's some bookish snobs out there that wouldn't vote for a mystery.
Yeah.
I get it.
Alex Cross is number 81.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And that's it. That's all of the mysteries on the list. A shout out to our mystery.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Kathy. All right.
So on this week's episode, we are going to highlight the work of Chris Ould. He writes a couple different genres. The ones we're going to focus on is obviously his mysteries. And Mom, would you take it away?
Chris Ould is a BAFTA award-winning screenwriter who has worked on many TV shows, including The Bill, Soldier, Soldier, Casualty, and Hornblower. He's the author of The Blood Strand, the first book in his Faroes series, which received a starred review from Booklist, which called it a winner for fans of Henning Mankell, as well as Road Lines and A Kind of Sleep. He lives in Dorset, England. After working at a wide variety of jobs from ice cream man to laborer, Chris Ould was first published as a novelist in the 1980s. He then spent many years working as a television scriptwriter, during which time he wrote more than 80 hours of drama and documentary programs, including numerous episodes of the crime series The Bill. one of which won the BAFTA award. Chris returned to novel writing with 2 young adult books before embarking on the Faroes Trilogy of crime novels. He also keeps sheep and tweets with the handle at writer Chris Ould, and that's his bio.
Chris asked if he could do a written interview with us, and we were just thrilled that he was willing to be interviewed at all. We sent him some questions, and we're going to go over those.
Stay tuned.
In a previous interview, you mentioned that there are barely any actual murders that take place on the Faroes Islands, and you were fortunate to be able to speak with a Faroes policeman regarding local police procedure. Were there any murders the Faroes police had to solve, and if so, were there any particularly inspiring for you? Murders are still very far and few between in the Faroes. Roughly 1 every 30 years. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty far. The last one was about 6 years ago, and the killer, not a Faroese person, was found guilty despite there being no body. That was only found a year later. So the islands aren't a rich source of inspiration for murder stories. In fact, when I first started talking to local police officers, they were really puzzled why anybody would think about setting a crime novel there. The real inspiration I found was in talking to them about how the Faroese police work, seeing how they interact with each other and their general outlook on life. On the whole, they're very laid back and philosophical, and I like that.
All right. The Faroes Islands have their own distinct language. Did you have to learn Faroese in order to write your trilogy? Are you fluent? Oh, I wish I could say I was fluent in Faroese. The truth is, I'm a terrible linguist. While I was doing research, I'm afraid I relied on a few stock Faroese phrases pronounced very badly, and on the fact that almost all the Faroese people speak very good English. However, I did have several very entertaining nights being taught how to swear in Faroese. I can still remember some of that vocabulary. I'd be interested to hear that.
Yeah,
me too.
It's amazing. The first thing you learn is the cuss word.
Right.
You write such vivid depictions of your characters. I was intrigued especially by Tove Hall. Can you discuss your inspiration for this character? Is she based on a real person? Well, first, thank you for the compliment. Tove is one of my favorite characters. Having used her in the first book, I hadn't originally planned for her to feature quite so much in the last one. But when it came down to it, I wanted to give her some more room. I like strong female characters, and I saw her as a breath of fresh air, not least because she says what she thinks without any filter. That makes her fun to write. I also like her stubbornness and the fact that she's both resilient and vulnerable at the same time. She's very loosely based on someone I know, but they'd never realize, and I'll never tell.
Fire Pit is the last in the trilogy, but will we see any characters in future works? At the moment, there are no firm plans to come back to these characters. I believe Reyna has probably run his course, but Hensi might be a different matter. I need to let the trilogy settle for a while, but I do have a couple of ideas for something else set in the Faroes. It's a place you just want to go back to.
In The Killing Bay, you give a vivid description of a quote-unquote grind. Is this a true tradition, and how often does it occur? If so, are there opposition from groups such as Greenpeace as the description in the book? The grind is very real. The Faroese people have killed pilot whales as a source of food for 1,000 years, but they can never know when or how many whales will be sighted, so the grind happens only when the opportunity arises. It's become a very vexed issue in the Faroes, and some controversy has been stirred up about it in the last few years, most notably by the Sea Shepherd organization. They want the grind stopped, and they've protested several times in the Faroes, but the debate about it is complex and gets very heated on both sides. In The Killing Bay, I tried to give a realistic impression of the situation, but without passing any kind of judgment. Ultimately, I think any decision about the future of the grind has to be made by the Faroese themselves.
Your love of the Faroes Islands comes through in your book. Has the trilogy had any impact on tourism to that part of the world? It's true. I do love the Faroes. And of course, the fact that the islands are going to double their hotel accommodations in the next year or so is entirely due to my books. Just joking. Seriously, there's been a real increase in awareness of the Faroes in the last few years. It's well-deserved, and I don't think I can claim any credit for that, although The Blood Strand did get to number 3 in the Faroes bestseller list. In some ways, and completely selfishly, I hope that greater tourist numbers don't impact the local society in a detrimental way. It's so easy for small cultures to be overwhelmed by outsiders, however well-meaning. That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We've seen it in other areas. In the back of the first book, The Blood Strand, the other 2 books are listed with release dates. Were these books planned as a trilogy, or were they just in the works? In the very beginning, I didn't set out to write a trilogy. I thought it would be a series set in the Faroes. But it soon became obvious that if I wanted to do justice to Reyna's story, I would have to follow his path over 3 books. The publisher, Titan Books, bought all 3 on the strength of the first one, even though the others weren't written at the time and only roughly plotted.
Which do you feel challenges you more as a writer? Your young adult novels or your thrillers? Also, which do you enjoy writing more? Both formats are challenging in different ways, but I think young adult books are probably harder to write. With young adult books, you have to remember that you're writing for an audience with far less experience of the world than adults, and at the same time, you have to treat them as intelligent and sensitive people. Having a teenager of my own helped, and I don't regret writing the 2 young adult novels, but I think it's unlikely that I'll write any more. Getting into the mindset of middle-aged characters is just a lot easier these days.
Do you have any upcoming events or books you would like our listeners to know about? Well, without wishing to say too much about something currently in progress, I'm working on a crime thriller set in Denmark. That's another Scandinavian country I love, and I found a lot of inspiration the last time I was there. This book will be very different to the Faroes Trilogy, but if you liked Tove Hall, then one of the characters in it may very well appeal to you too.
That's great. I can't wait.
Yes.
That's something to look forward to from Mr. Ould.
Yes. So what we did was each one of us read one of the books in the trilogy. And we're going to go over just a little something about each one of them so you can familiarize yourself, and then you can go get the books and read them yourselves because they are definitely worth it. I read the first one, which is called The Blood Strand. Having left the Faroes as a child, Jan Reyna is now a British police detective, and the islands are foreign to him. But he is drawn back when his estranged father is found unconscious with a shotgun by his side and someone else's blood at the scene. Then a man's body is washed up on an isolated beach. Is Reyna's father responsible? Looking for answers, Reyna falls in with local detective Hensi, but as the stakes get higher, Reyna learns more about his family and the truth behind his mother's flight from the Faroes. He must decide whether to stay or to forsake the strange and windswept island for good. This was a great introduction to these characters, and I could not put this book down. It was 400 pages, and between work and all my laundry and everything I have to do here, I managed to get that book done in 3 days because it was very well done. Chris Ould is a master at weaving a tale.
Well, I read the second in the book, and it's called The Killing Bay. When a group of activists arrive on the Faroes Islands to stop the traditional whale hunt, tensions between islanders and protesters run high, and when a woman is found murdered, circumstances seem designed to increase animosity. To English detective Jan Reyna and local detective Hjalti Hensi, it becomes increasingly clear evidence is being hidden from from them, and neither knows who to trust or how far the people might go to hide their beliefs. There were a lot of people in this book. They were all of Jan Reyna's relatives and all of Heinz's relatives. There's a group of protesters, and one of the protester people gets killed. It's very muddled until you get